right. Well, before we start talking to Dutch officially, because Randy, you're recording, I see. You always do that.
Yeah.
And I never listen to the show, so I don't know if he gives us a good edit or not. But I just got to give a shout out to Thomas Burke, because we wouldn't be sitting here talking to Dutch without him. With that TBR report, I pitched it to him on air. Clark hates it when I do that we get together and we start a segment. He's one of the only people that have ever taken us up on it.
Yeah.
And he brought me Whore in the High Desert, which was a, found footage movie on Tubi that, I mean, this is going to sound really like egotistical, but back in the day, we used to have a lot of time to dig through Amazon Prime and Tubi and find cool shit to talk about and people to find. We just don't right now with the film fest and everything. And Thomas, you're doing God's work, man, because we had such a good time watching Whore in the High Desert.
Yeah.
And you did the impossible task of actually getting us a fan of the show in the director.
It's happened before. Will happen again.
I mean, I counted my time, the number. But Dutch, dude, thank you for taking the time out to talk with us.
Thanks. I'm stoked to be on the show. And
now, Dutch, here's yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I was in Palm Springs, like celebrating that the movie was getting watched, and sure. I get a Facebook message from Thomas, like introducing himself and directing me to the podcast. And I was like, who is this dude? So I checked it out and started kind of like befriended Tom. And dude, I wish I had like a fraction of that guy's energy.
Oh,
he has seen every
we talk
movie
about it all the time. I know it's insane of like, he is just an encyclopedia of film and certainly of found footage, because I think he's seen everything. But with Tom, we worry about his health because he's working nonstop.
He's fucking Icarus, dude.
He's smoking. Yeah. I mean, let me tell you something. That sun is right there.
It's only going to be days before he burns out, and there's a movie about finding him.
Yeah, for sure. He is certainly setting himself up for this. No question.
Yeah, I don't. Dutch, we're the same age. We're both born in '85. I've been creeping around on you, and all these young kids. It's that damn stereotype where he's got 5 monitors in a room. He's watching 2 movies, cutting 2 movies at the same time, and he's on his Letterboxd posting.
Yeah.
I struggle to do one of those things.
Me too. He's got like Dexter's Laboratory set up in there.
Well, you say that, and yet we're here talking about a movie that you filmed in quarantine. And I don't know how many people think about found footage this way, but there's definitely a like film culture that has, like Quarantine and Unfriended vaguely, but Paranormal Activity and Blair Witch. And then there's the internet film community that's got like all our favorite people. Like, we got Fear Footage with Ricky Umberger, and we have we got Hell House LLC, all these like little franchises. Somehow you made it in there, and you've got one movie that's on Tubi. So I'm curious how people even found it. And I am aware that Tubi made a subcategory of found footage horror. But if you're a fan of found footage horror and you go through there, you'll notice that some of those aren't even in-world camera at all.
And we champion Tubi on the show.
Oh, I love Tubi. Yeah. They're local. Yeah, but
they're doing the Lord's work over there.
But I'm still not convinced I would have ever found your movie. So, I mean, how does it feel? Like, how did the internet find you?
I am still trying to figure that out. I was originally like really disappointed when it came out because it was supposed to premiere on Amazon, but they had like months prior to this, they had made a decision to stop releasing independently produced nonfiction, so documentaries. And this is presented as a documentary. It even used the words like in the opening of the movie, it says this movie documents blah blah blah. Yeah. So they were like, they pulled it and, excuse me, and we're like, yeah, it's too it doesn't do a good job of letting you know that it's not real. So I was just like, okay, it's going out to pasture on Tubi, because I was not really familiar with Tubi. And then I was I think it was like a couple weeks after it came out, Dread Central uh, did like 5 different little blurbs on it that were super cool. They interviewed me, did like a little interview, but I still was not sure if people were watching it or not. And then I read this IMDb review where this guy was like, this Facebook group I'm in is, like going bananas over this movie. I think it's shit. And I was like, Facebook group? So I dug around and found it, and it was like, it was surreal to see all these posts of people. It was really divided. People either love this movie or hate it, which was interesting to read all of that. And I think Letterboxd, which I was also new to, is kind of responsible for people seeing it because it's been shared a lot on Letterboxd.
Now, who in Dread Central reached out to you?
Mike Sproggy. I could be saying that wrong. I actually blindly sent them a screener, and then he responded. Shockingly, because you'll send like 50 emails to people like that and get maybe 1 response.
Sure. So now I know you're a newer listener, but we used to have a bit that we like canned where we would refer to our like not part of the podcast programmer at UF, Madeline, as Marbles, and the joke was that we always said she had died. We're terrible friends. Now
It's not really up for debate.
Now she did some work with Fangoria and Rue Morgue, and we always flirted with the idea of trying to do like a magazine, and we thought it would be cool for like found footage. And she was kind of telling me their editorial process that she used. So I'm imagining you sent that screener out to them, and somebody saw it and said, "Hey, anybody interested in this gets to keep the movie and cover it." So I wanted you to mention Mike because, man, maybe we should talk to him. Anybody who's got like a little bit of a platform and is willing to reach out and cover something that's, this is a niche market we're dealing with here. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that's found footage is his thing.
Cool. Because we need people like him. What you listened when we had Nick on, and I mentioned being a gatekeeper of like film, and he corrected me. He's like, we should be key masters. Was that the correct term?
Yeah, enough Ghostbusters.
I know, and I thought about that after. I'm like, was he fucking Ghostbustering me?
Of
right
course
there?
he was.
Oh yeah, but yeah. Shout out to Mike. Maybe we should look him up because, man, that's the real hurdle I think indie film have now is just like you premiered on Tubi, which I think is pretty cool. But the first thing I thought was, why Tubi?
Yeah, it's and it's a lot bigger than I thought too. It's in New Zealand, Australia, Mexico, and I think Canada. But apparently they have plans to go worldwide.
I had just assumed they were worldwide. Man, I'm naive.
Yeah,
I don't know how things work.
This every day. So before we get in too deep on this, Dutch, I think a good starting point with all this is you and you, with your name specifically, because I hear the name Dutch, I think of 2 things. I think of
oven.
I do not think of as a name. I think of a pitcher in the 1930s, and I think of a doctor in the Old West. You don't appear to be either one of those things.
What about the best character in Predator?
No.
Hear ye. Okay, so
again, I'm a Stallone guy. Fuck Arnold.
So it's actually my middle name. It's my grandfather's name. It's Yugoslavian, but it's actually pronounced properly Dutch.
Oh.
So Duch. And the reason I transformed it into Dutch is because when I was doing the acting thing down here, I'd be sitting in an audition waiting room forever, and then a little casting assistant would come out and be like, giggle. I always knew when they were going to call me because they would kind of look at the paper for a while and giggle, be like, douche Marich. And it would like my blood would boil. So I'm like, it's not douche, like. So finally I was like, I'm throwing a T in it and going by Dutch. because it was, I either got douche, because most people would say douche without realizing what was even coming out of their mouth.
Yeah.
Like, they're not hearing what they're saying out loud, or they would say Dutch. So I'm like, I asked my grandpa, I was like, would you care if I put a T in here and went by Dutch? And he's like, go for it. I've dealt with the people not being able to pronounce it too.
That's
and
great.
Then it just,
no, it's a tricky thing because in high school I was the PA announcer for the baseball team because I realized I was better at that than catching fly balls. So my senior year, I transitioned over to do the PA announcing. I'll never forget. I would always have to go to the opposing team's coach and get the lineup, and then I would go over any names that was kind of tricky. Now, the majority of the teams would hand me a piece of paper that it printed out the roster. This particular coach at Riverfield Academy did not do such a thing. He hand wrote everything, and I really couldn't read half of them, and he really didn't care. So there was a kid on the team named Houston, but it was spelled like John Houston, and a 17-year-old Clark was not aware of John Houston and the spelling of John Houston, so I pronounced it Huston. And boy, the giggles that pursued. So, yeah, it's a tricky thing.
What is this, some deep trauma with you?
No, I'm just saying.
Okay.
I'm just saying names are fucked up, man. And we get squirrely with names.
And me and you do all the time when we're covering this shit, especially back to Thomas doing his international deep dive into found footage.
Well, because we all have boring names.
Yeah, I know.
You're Russell Fisher. I'm Clark. Oksana's got an interesting name. It took me 7 years to figure out how to say her last name.
Oh, you figured
You've
it out?
You've been dating her for 11. You couldn't even tell me.
I can't spell
What is it?
Osachi.
How is it spelled?
Osacchiy, right?
Yes, it used to be spelled.
The Y would throw me for a loop. Yeah.
People have asked me if I'm Japanese. It used to be Osachia, and there was a D in it.
What? Where the hell did that go?
Yeah, Osadchaya.
Nope.
Mm-hmm.
Not trying it.
You should see it spelt in Cerulean or whatever they right. Hieroglyphics.
That's right. In the blood of their conquered enemies.
Yeah.
Love it.
Right, you have any other probing questions for Dutch?
No, I think I'm done.
You could have went on IMDb and saw that was not his first name.
Well, no, but I'm asking. But it's an interesting name, and we got an interesting story, and we would not have gotten if it had not been for me. Thank you very much, Russell. It's your show.
All right. Well, I have a question for you, and so Horror in the High Desert. You've basically taken what South Park decreed was murder porn. And is that what they were calling it? I think it was murder porn, where it's this kind of like true crime forensic files. And I mean, I'm guilty of it. I used to go to bed playing forensic files until Oksana complained that it was too bright of a show. Now, not in context, just in literal, like,
lit up the room.
Visual medium. Yeah, it lights up the room all night.
Well, we're a true crime society now.
Yeah, but I'm not really. I don't like true crime.
But it's in everything.
It's everything. And I remember when we first started doing the podcast, somebody came up and they're like, "Yeah, you guys are kind of like Last Podcast on the Left." And I instantly, you hear a name like that, and you're like, "Oh, that's got to be a horror show." I'm like, "Oh, they do true crime?" And then I was introduced.
Do they?
Yeah, they do a lot of true crime.
Pass.
Weird, right? Like, there's a confusing nonfiction fiction thing, but what I'm trying to get to here is that your film is called Horror in the High Desert. Yet the film is it's a TV show essentially, where you have a crew doing a what 99% of could be any TV show on the Travel Channel or on Discovery, but then you got that one extra percent that's just like the fiction found footage stuff we love. Yeah. And so what? This is like a dorky question, but do you have any idea what the show would be called in this world?
Like the TV show version of Horror in the High Desert?
One of the things I walked away from with your film was I loved the concept and the presentation, but I wanted to know, like, because as found footage fans, I'm sure you do this too, the craft is part of it. And yet you've done such a good job making the TV show that they don't ever talk about. Like, we don't know who the host is. We don't know how their production is, where they're based out of, what TV channel we're on. And I'm kind of like, this community, I think we would be into it.
Okay, I'm so stoked to hear you saying this, because the overall kind of Bible for Horror in the High Desert is that it is a series. Each movie is going to be like an episode of kind of like a mashup of. Have you ever seen Disappeared?
I think I have.
Like on the
They
ID
kind of
network.
blend together. Yeah.
They're all kind of the same docu-series type of thing. So each movie is going to exist in the High Desert universe, but they're not going to necessarily be all related. Like the next movie coming out at the beginning of this year, the beginning of next year, is called Minerva, and it takes place like in the next town over from where Gary went missing. And at some point, so you remember from the first movie, Gal, the woman that plays the journalist, her part was done over Zoom. She's gonna kind of be she'll transition into being like the host, for lack of a better term, and then I'm gonna come out from behind the camera and also introduce myself as the filmmaker behind it and play the other host. So each episode, or they're movies, but I'm calling them episodes. So each episode will be kind of covering a different either disappearance or murder or phenomena, because they're not all going to be true crime. But I think the title would still be Horror in the High Desert. Because each installment will have, like, the next one is called Horror in the High Desert Minerva, because the woman who goes that it centers around, her name's Minerva, type of deal.
Well, you know what that works with perfectly? Because I kept trying to think, is there a real life example of a movie that kind of was made, for whatever reason, and found an audience and turned into something more? And, Catfish. That's exactly what happened with that show. Neve went out and they were like, we don't know what we're doing. And again, I know there's a huge debate on whether this is like fictional or not, which is why I think Catfish works so well in found footage.
The feature film?
Both. The feature film and the show. Now, the
feature's bullshit.
Okay. I know. I like to believe that it's real. I'm glad somebody does.
Bullshit.
No, here's the thing. It's like, the movie was made and it's interesting no matter what. And I mean, if that were in Horror in the High Desert and it ended with a murder, oh my God, it would have been amazing.
Yeah.
But part of the reason why I think it's real is because it ends on such a flat line. But, it did transition into an MTV show, which now has an English wing. And dude, Clark, have we ever talked about this?
An English wing? What do you mean? They serve tea and biscuits?
So they have a edition that across the pond.
Oh,
so they have Catfish over there. And
we've been copying them for decades, so it's about time they copy us,
dude.
And they copy Catfish.
So one of the hosts,
that's what they pick.
Yeah, right. That's what did it. Jesus Christ!
And here's the thing: one of the hosts, I swear to God, he's an albino, and his name is Uba. It's OOHBA. Uba. And they say it all that we turned it into a drinking game. We're like, every time they say Uba, you got to take a shot. Anyway, with Horror in the High Desert, I kept trying to think like, man, you've got legs here. And I didn't know if you felt trapped by the title or not, but it sounds like you've already thought about this, and Horror in the High Desert Minerva works. Because, dude, you could even work the angle of like, hey, this was going to be a pilot that failed, and I dumped it on Tubi, and now it found an audience. So you know what? Fuck them. I'm just doing it. It's just me and this journalist, and dude, I really think you're going to be in there with like the Fear footage and Hell House LLC, because
thank you. I'm stoked about that.
Now, all you got to do, just keep the good ideas coming. Now, are you a fan of the Fear footage?
Yeah, I am. Absolutely.
So,
it's incredible what he achieved with so little.
Yeah, on an iPad. He shot and edited the thing on an
iPad?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
yeah.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
That's crazy. I'm super stoked to hear you say that. And your drinking game with, what was it?
Uba.
Uba. Oh my God. People do that with Horror in the High Desert. They're like, if I hear Gary one more time,
Oh,
I'm like, oh God, it was kind of hard to like edit that out because they're who they're talking about. It's the guy that's missing. So, of course they're going to keep saying his name, but people do the same thing with Gary.
That's interesting because I've had conversations about that. Like, what is too much when you identify a character by name in a script? Because that really bothers people. Where I'm on the other side of that argument, where if I remember a character's name, it's an achievement on my part. And
Yeah.
the thing
or
is,
an actor's name.
yeah, but like in the docu-series you've created, when you mention Gary all the time, I feel like when I'm talking to people and they don't really have a deep connection with somebody, they'll mention them by name. And it
Yeah.
kind of felt like it gave your movie this kind of atmosphere, like people really cared about Gary now that he's gone. And they kept
Yeah.
mentioning him. And they're like, oh, I'm thinking back now. And it's kind of this like if you've ever been to a friend's memorial and people are always like,
Mhm.
oh, my buddy. Oh, God, I almost mentioned a real friend that died. No, but they keep mentioning him by name. Yeah, it wouldn't have been. Yeah. And it's like, oh, Gary. Yeah, I don't know. I felt like that added to the depth of your film.
It's a hard line because if you're going for realism, which is my thing for all of these movies, is as much
Thank you.
realism as I can get. Yeah. And so with the actors, they definitely had specific lines that they had to say. But for the interviews, each question and answer, we would go over it right before we taped it. And most of them, they had no idea what they were going to be saying until that day, so that I could kind of get them to have that emotional recall or, word recall and appear as if they're really trying to recall a memory type of thing. So it was hard to filter out like some repetitive things that happened. And I really wanted to go for the realism of an actual Dateline or Unsolved Mysteries type of show where you don't have all the answers and not every single thing is explained, like the age difference between Beverly and Gary. Oh my God.
Yeah.
It is hilarious. The funny thing is we actually shot a thing explaining that.
Oh.
Explaining their age difference. But then I was like, do I really need to include that? Because on a Dateline, which is what I kind of modeled this around, they wouldn't ever, they're not going to take the time to explain why Mary Beth doesn't look like her brother Bob, or because it's like kind of irrelevant to the subject matter. But looking back, man, I wish I would have, because it is like the first thing that people, almost every review and everyone that reaches out to me to talk about it, they're like, what is with their like 20 or 30-year age gap? And I was like, maybe I should have thrown that in there, but
No, because look, people they're talking about the movie. You know what I mean? It's an engagement thing. So yeah, no.
Also, it's a distancing factor.
And it's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting.
That's the thing, is that this is interesting. It is uncommon, but who gives a shit?
Well, and I mean, you mentioned it in the reality you're creating. As long as it's authentic to itself, it doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah.
And I call it a distancing tactic because the whole Overlook thing was born out of like getting friends together and watching indie movies in a theater setting because we had a projector. And when you watch a lot of movies, watch a lot of horror movies with people who aren't horror fans, you learn when people start getting scared or invested and they want to back off from it, they'll do shit like that. Like they'll get hung up on like how their age difference is so weird. And it's like, why are you focusing on this? And it's because they don't want to interact with the material. They don't want to empathize with something that's going a found footage route.
Yeah.
So, fuck those things. Like, I think real found footage fans or like in-world camera people like us, I love hearing you say that, because if you add that in, it sounds like that's the director talking to me right now trying to shut me up.
Yes, it's like I'm spoon feeding you, like, yeah. Okay. I'm
Yeah,
glad
you
to
need
hear
a
you.
degree of separation. Have you ever watched Butterfly Kisses before?
Yes, what's that guy's name?
Eric
Eric
Christopher
Christopher
Myers.
Meyer. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
trippy movie.
Now, he did it correctly, where you have a documentary about a character who's under scrutiny. So he's put in this position where he needs to debunk everything so people stop talking shit to him. And
Mhm.
I think that's the only way I've ever seen that work. Otherwise, it feels like the director's literally talking to me like, hey, that clown looked fake over there because he bought that at the store down the street and it cracked up. It's like, shut up. That's exposition
Yeah,
that ruins it.
it stands out. It definitely stands out to me too, where it's like, and then another thing too was I've read so many reviews where like people say Gary can't fake an American accent to save his life. And I'm like, you think that that's what's going on here? That's just how he speaks. The guy
Whoa.
has a speech impediment.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science. I mean, there's a lot of people think that he was British trying to do an American accent.
Weird.
Well, they're idiots.
Isn't that mind blowing? I'm like, all right.
That's more than one person. That's a feedback of more than one person.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we have a problem on our hands.
Well, here's the thing.
That's ridiculous.
Now, let me stand up for the found footage community. There are a lot of people who don't get out much. They hang out at home and they have a plethora of films to enjoy via the internet. So the fact that people are having discourse about this movie at all makes me so happy.
Of course. And also people get really, really weird and really, really just trite with accents. I mean, it's always going to be a thing, especially when you're dealing with like specific, sections of this country. Obviously, we have a big country. We have a lot of people in this country.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of people that talk different than other people.
We have a lot of immigration too.
It's an enormous amount, and it's great. And if we would actually take a step back and look at it, realize how beautiful that is, and realize our differences and how we react. But then, like, if you have a British person doing a Southern accent, or if you have like Dan Aykroyd trying to be a Southern dandy in Driving Miss Daisy. By the way, people in the South are still talking about that 30 years later. It is terrible, by the way. But yeah, people get really, really weird with accents and the portrayal therein.
There's also a lot of British people who kill it. They take all the American rules.
Well, I think it's the training. I think it's the training of the British actor opposed to the American accent.
Now, it's funny because it sounds like you're offended personally as a person with a very lovely accent.
Well, mine is finely curated.
Yeah, it's great. I literally took a metal bat to the head and I chew on my tongue now when I talk. But, we learn to live with it.
Well, Californians have a very, non-offensive, sterile, boring accent.
Yeah. It's funny because with Gary in the movie, from the first minute I heard him, I thought he was like just special needs. And I thought it was like a thing that we weren't talking about. And it's like, oh, they're kind of letting this guy unsupervised out in the wilderness doing survival videos, which is very popular on YouTube. But yeah, I thought that was like an underlined kind of
that's another thing that got brought up. And I think one thing that on my end that may have kind of let it that way unintentionally is that I needed his character to be someone that did not have a lot of friends for a reason. And so because you can't have someone go missing for a week and not have people reaching out all over the place. That was like a major concern, is how is this guy going to be on a week-long excursion, be 2 days late, and it's not a red flag right off the bat. So I made him a character that just did not connect well with other people. He's a bookworm. He loves making his model railroads. And I think a lot of people interpreted the him not connecting well with people as like him being autistic
Yeah.
or special needs. But he's in real life, he is a brilliant, awesome dude. He actually just moved up somewhere near you guys. He is the director of a railroad up there.
Oh shit.
A railroad museum. Yeah.
So the train thing was real, borrowed from real life.
Oh, him and I are both huge rail fans. Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. He's like a train aficionado, though.
When I was a kid, my dad took me. My dad would try to. We would try to go on bonding expeditions together. Like one time, the first big one, outside of like going to football games and stuff, he took me, canoeing one time, and our canoe tipped over, and we lost everything. But it was a good trip. And then one time we went. There was a thing called riding the rails, and it was essentially you would be on like one of those little. It's like an electric cart thing, and it would go and you know what I'm talking about, and you could do that.
Wait, I have no idea what you're talking about.
I don't know.
In my head.
What are those things called?
There's one
I'm
called
imagining a mine
Raptor,
cart that you pump.
It's not a pump. It's not a pump.
It's like a little go-kart that goes on the train tracks.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, and we would ride. We rode the train tracks for like half a day.
So are they like defunct tracks or like?
No. These are active tracks. And it was up in Kosciuszko, which is a central part of the state, and it was great. We went over the Big Black River.
Is there a fear of ever being hit by a train?
No.
How is there not a fear?
They had it worked out.
Okay. Well, I'm imagining like basically a bumper car on a train track, and it's like,
essentially, I think it's one of those. I think it could actually like they would have it if they needed to like do work on a train or something, or anything to kind of help out with the maintenance of the track. They get the little cart out,
and you could rent them.
Yeah, it was a thing called riding the rails, and I've always been fascinated with trains, but I'm not like a big gearhead in that way.
Yeah, that was in California.
No, that was in Mississippi, back home where I grew up. Yeah, that was in Mississippi.
Yeah, we don't do that shit out here, Dutch.
I was like, I want to do it. Are you both from California?
I'm originally from Mississippi.
Oh, okay.
I've been out here a decade.
Okay.
Yeah, don't ask that. He gets very angry.
No, I did it fine. And then Russ, you're a native. You've been here.
I'm from
life.
like 2 miles away.
You've been to like 5 states.
Yeah, for sure, and I'm very proud of it now.
That's fine.
Yeah, I would like to go more.
We'll get you out there a little more.
Y'all are tripping me out with this train stuff. I've never understood.
Trains are cool.
Actually, one of the girls who used to write, she was a contributor for the Overlook. She would babysit a lot, and she babysat this one kid who she swore was like a sociopath. Like he was just very cold and weird interaction, and she would she would be creeped out a lot by this boy, and he had kind of like violent tendencies too. The only way she could chill him out is put on a live feed of a train station where it's just one of those cameras at a train stop. And he would just sit there for hours and watch it. So I've always kind of like associated.
That was me as a child.
Right?
That was me. I would have just been glued. Yeah.
Can we send Dutch The Most Beautiful Railway?
Oh, probably.
Yeah, let's do that.
I mean, I wouldn't mention that on air, but
why?
I don't know. They're cool. Yeah, so Dutch, there's a in-world camera feature that we got to show you called The Most Beautiful Railway that deals with the train, and it's from Germany.
Yeah,
and these dudes were so cool. They were like gonna fly out and do it. It just didn't work out, but I'll make a note of that right now.
Is it a horror or is it?
Oh, it's horror.
Dude, I don't tell people that. I'm just like, you like found footage, just check it out.
It's footage of a train.
Are you on a computer? I see your eyes moving. Don't look it up.
Me?
Yeah, you.
Oh, I'm not going to look it up. Yeah, but as soon as we're off here, I can't believe I've never heard of it.
It's great. It's a 40-minute short.
Oksana, can you look that up? It actually might be streaming somewhere.
Oh man, I've got to find it. One of the later installments of Horror in the High Desert takes place on a train.
Oh, love it.
So I got to make sure.
Like,
this keeps happening to me where I'll get this amazing idea. What I think is amazing. And then all of a sudden, here it is coming out, a movie just like it. Like I had this incredible concept, which I'm still going to do because it's a lot different than the Deep House, but it's a similar kind of thing. And then I saw that trailer and I was like, what the F? Like,
Yeah.
it just kills me when that happens. But
Did you see the Deep House?
unfortunately I did.
Oh, there we go.
All right, Dutch, I was in love with you, but what? Okay.
I didn't hate it, but I had a really insane near-death experience in high school of drowning. I got sucked into a drain pipe of a pool and traveled through a drain pipe for like 200 yards and came out in a river. So
whoa,
it was insane. Yeah. So watching that movie, I almost can't even judge it as a movie because I was so like drenched in sweat and kept having to stop it. Just that hearing that the bubbles when they breathe and just that underwater kind of like monotone hum thing just kept tripping me out.
All right, Dutch. Terrifying story.
No, it's a horrifying experience. I had the same
no
thing.
disrespect, but unless that drain pipe ended in a haunted house, I don't see the connection.
They're underwater for an hour, facing and then at the end there's a ticker, like a time clock.
Yeah,
where you're at a race to get to the top. The end pissed me off. I'll definitely say that.
Yeah. I get it.
Which the after credit or the Sonic the Hedgehog ticking time get some air thing?
What happens right before the credits? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think we're all kind of agree there. Yeah, again, that film, like I got into a big argument with the screenwriter that we love. Shout out to listener Sam. He, when we were talking about it, I was very excited because, like I mentioned earlier, found footage films, the craft is always such an interesting part of it. And I'd never seen an underwater drone before. So I'm like, dude, my mind's just getting blown at every turn. And when I talked to Sam, he's like, you have a lot of problems with the story when they get in the haunted house. And he starts mentioning all these like bad ways of telling a story via script. And I'm like, well, we're in two different worlds right now.
Yeah.
Like I was amazed that a dude was rocking on a rocking chair in scuba gear underwater.
Yeah.
Like that's
yeah, there was some brutal exposition in there, but I think that the
pardon the pun, it washed right over me.
Oh boy. All right, we'll be right back. We're going to take a quick break. No, I think just from a technical standpoint, how they were able to pull that off was just incredible.
Unreal.
And I think it looks great. Yeah. And so that alone really carried me through it. But like, yeah, man, there's problems. Don't get me wrong.
Well, what about Chekhov's like, I can't hold my breath? Like right off the bat, you're like,
oh yeah.
But you're dealing with an underwater story. Like,
I know.
You know, natural. Because like, here's the thing. I'm a fire sign, but I do love the water.
That was really weird.
I know. I know what I'm doing. I love the water, but it terrifies the hell out of me. But I do love it because I again, going back to that canoeing trip, I ended up going down that river many times, the Okatoma River, in Seminary, Mississippi. Great if you're ever down there. And I became very fond of kayaking. And one time we were on a big trip, and the river was up, and I got into the current, and then there was an undertow coming in from the current, and I got pinned up against a rock, and I couldn't get out of it. And then someone's dad got me out of there because I don't know if I could have gotten out. And so, yeah, man, the drowning thing, it's scary, man.
Yeah, water to me, after that, I'm just like, woof. Even in just scenes in, I think it was 007, the latest one. There was a scene where I was like, oh, I'm going to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
It gives me like a physical, I can't watch that anymore kind of thing.
No, it's tough.
It's weird too, because when you look into humans and how long we can survive without air, you realize how psychological drowning is too. Because
Yeah.
what kills us is breathing in water.
Yeah, because your body just shuts off and you pass out.
Well, you can hold your you can work without oxygen for over 2 minutes,
And
but it's got to be your brain.
Part about it to me is that when this happened to me is you have time to think,
oh yeah,
this is about to happen. And then it got to a point where I was like, I physically couldn't keep my mouth closed anymore. That, when you're swimming underwater and you can't wait to get to the top and just take that like that big breath, and it hits a point where your body is just gonna do it anyway. And fortunately for me, it happened right as I came out in the river, so I was able to hack it up.
So now, if you're comfortable talking about it, I feel like I'm dying to know why you followed that clown down the storm drain.
God.
So what happened?
Bored. Had a board.
He wanted to play paper boats.
Yeah. Oh man.
No, really. Like, how did you get in the storm drain?
So it's an outdoor pool.
Yeah.
And this is in the high desert, back where I shoot all these movies, back where I grew up. It's kind of like a hot springs that they turned into a pool. And it was summer morning, and it started lightning in the distance. So the lifeguards automatically pull everyone out of the pool. Everybody's got to go home. But we knew two of the lifeguards, me and my cousins. So they let us stay. And their procedure, since they're still on the clock, is to drain the pool and then pull up all the moss at the bottom and push it down the drain once the pool is actually drained. And it was super windy, kind of like that howling type of wind where it's like almost like movie wind. And the lifeguard was telling me, once we get the drain open, there's a metal grate that covers it that I need your help if you can pull that off. And I didn't hear the part of once the pool is drained. So I dove in before anyone could stop me and swam, not even thinking the drain was open, swam straight to this drain. And I didn't realize until I got right up to it and saw things like flying into it at like 50 miles an hour that I was like, oh shit, I'm in danger. So I pushed off the bottom, because this is maybe like 12 or 15 feet deep. I'm bad with measurements. It could have been deeper, but so I tried swimming to the top and I just couldn't get anywhere.
Oh my God.
And then it was just like, I got sucked right into it because I had pulled the screen off just enough that it sucked me in through the side, cut me all up to hell, and immediately got stuck because there was a boulder, but I could turn my head back and see the bottom of the lake and see lightning. Like all of a sudden it would light up. And so I was kicking around. I didn't even realize at that point, like, the amount of danger I was in until I started moving down the pipe and the light got smaller and smaller and smaller. And then it was just pitch black. And that's when I had enough time to think, this is how I'm going to kick the bucket. But fortunately, it comes out in a river. So it was the most terrifying water slide of my life.
But what's the time? Do you have like an accurate portrayal of like the time frame it took between you entering the drain and getting out?
It was long enough that So in between where the pool is, where I got sucked in, and the river where it comes out, there's a big fence to kind of separate the two. And it was long enough of a time that by the time I rolled up on the side of the bank and crawled up to look through the fence, they were all looking in the pool down at the drain, and the lifeguards were taking off their stuff and getting ready to dive down. They were coming up with a plan of what they were going to do because they thought that I got stuck up against the screen. So they were going to both swim down from the side and try to like pull me left or right. They were just in a panic trying to figure out what to do. And I screamed right in time before they dove in. So it was minutes wise, I have no idea. It felt like forever, but
yeah, for sure.
I didn't die, so
thank God. Fuck, that sounds terrifying. How big was the drain? Because I imagine that being claustrophobic.
You
too.
didn't die, but in a way, Dutch, you were reborn.
Oh yes, I was. I was an emotional baby when I came out of that thing. I would hear birds chirping and just start bawling. Be like, I mean, it was crazy. But the pipe was 24 inches. It was like a trash can size. And thank God back then I was all knees and elbows. I was like a lanky, built like a grasshopper little thing.
Now, you were going to turn that into an episode. I'm sure you still are. And if you don't want to talk about it, I get it. But
no. So based on that experience, and after reading about Lake Lanier, have you guys heard of Lake Lanier?
No.
Google it after this. It's insane. It's a man-made lake that kind of flooded. They basically flooded a town. They evacuated a town, flooded the whole area, and it turned into a lake. So there's like a race car, not stadium, but there's a raceway underwater there. There's structures all over underwater, and people die by the dozens there every year. And there's just crazy stories around this place. So I came up with a
Please tell me it's an underwater racing story.
Yeah, dude, it's F1.
Oh, dude.
What?
It's pretty close to you, Randy. You could go out there. It's in Atlanta. Or it's in Georgia, I mean.
I see that. I'm looking it up.
It's in Georgia.
Thanks for joining us, Randy.
Stories, like the creepy stories, will go down a rabbit hole. By the way, since we've started, I've drank this much water because I'm afraid of getting what you two call old man mouth.
Oh, yeah. Dude, isn't it brutal?
It's bad.
I laughed so hard when you guys said that. Old man mouth.
There's something about that NPR kind of like highly produced S-Town where they turn the gain up all the way and you just hear like, oh.
I can't stand it.
Well, ASMR's in, dude.
That is not ASMR.
It's ASMR, Jason.
You know, it happened while we were talking. Now, I realize now that not everybody has like headphones on. Like me and Clark are wearing cans right now, and you can't really hear the gurgle that comes up a lot of the time, but it happened with Clark in the beginning of this interview. Every time you can see it, Dutch. If you ever see Clark go wide-eyed for a minute, it's because he drank something bubbly and it came back up.
I know. Well, I had to get my Mandarin Doritos into that.
Now, shit, we gotta bring this back. Thank you for sharing that.
Now first, Dutch, if you look to your right in the chat, Randy actually put a link to The Most Beautiful Railway. Thank you, Randy.
Oh, great. Thank you, Randy.
All right, 1 point for Randy being the best producer. Oksana, do you want to weigh in there?
I found that it's available on DVD and the link, but it just never came back to me. So.
All right, Randy.
Excuses. All right, you lose mic privileges. Randy, go ahead and turn on your camera now. Okay, we have stopped doing that, or we got to record video. Good job, Randy. Now you get to star in Dutch's movie where you die in this lake. So
let's do it. We'll actually go there.
I don't think Randy could drown because he's so hairy.
Wait, what?
He's just gonna always float. Randy can't sink.
Do you absorb oxygen through body hair?
I don't know, but he's the most deceptively hairy person of all time.
This is
Don't
true.
you take a
I
look at
can't grow
Randy? Would
facial
you
hair,
think
though.
that he's got Robin Williams chest hair down there?
I would not. Robin Williams chest hair.
All right,
It's
Randy,
funny
take
when
off
your
your shirt.
camera comes on because you're clearly the IT guy, though. There's a lot of tech going on there.
Also, Russell, the shirt only comes off for the Patreon, which we don't have yet.
All right, dude. We got to make that
That's a
happen.
special tier.
God.
How much? $20 a month for the shirtless Randy cast?
Sure.
I feel like that was way too
Also
long.
out for 20.
Okay.
Yeah, turn off your camera, Randy. You're fired too. God damn it. Dutch, I'm sorry. We used to have better help.
Now, Dutch, I do want to compliment you on naming a character Gal. I very much enjoyed that.
Thank you.
To have a journalist named Gal. I was just at first when I first saw it, I was like, wait, did they forget an I somewhere? But then I was like, you know what? I like this. I like Gal as a name.
It's funny you say that you thought I forgot an I, because she thought up until we started filming the new one that her name was Gail. And I
Yeah.
was like, no, it's Gal. It's Gal. Another, I'm glad you brought this up, thing is there is one. So when I was finishing this movie, I was also working with a film festival and helping them really digitize everything to do the virtual pandemic festival thing, which was way more work than I realized it was going to be. So I was doing that and finishing the movie at the same time, and mortifyingly, a typo made it into the current cut of the movie that's on Tubi. It'll be replaced, but I didn't notice it until we're sitting at the festival in a theater, because I got to go do a small in-person thing.
Oh man.
And I just like seeing it the size of like a bookshelf misspelled was so mortifying. Did you guys catch that? I'm curious.
I don't remember.
I don't think so.
Why? What was it?
The roommate Simon, when he first appears on screen, it says his name is spelled right, but then roommate only has one M. ROOMATE. That's pretty mortifying for a filmmaker.
Now, yeah. All right. Here's the thing. You need to know one thing, Dutch. Russell
you.
is the worst speller of all time.
So, in fifth grade, I remember this very clearly. I hated back to school night. And Mr. Lenhart, God rest, no, I don't, he's not dead. God bless his soul.
He may be.
I remember he told my parents, he was like, your son has great ideas and he's smart. The fact that he can't spell doesn't matter. Computers will do it for him in the future anyway. And it was, not only was he right, but he's wrong. Because fucking spell check, like I try to rely, dude, sometimes they hang me out to dry. And I'm like, and then Clark, he won't let me get away with fucking anything. This is why we have another monitor in the room, so that I can split the screens and I can look up shit without you being able to read. Because you would stop what you're saying to point out I spelled something wrong. So thank you for that. Also, Dutch, I sympathize with you greatly. Until we started doing a film fest, I never knew what it was like to have that like this screening is now more than watching a movie. It's a thing that we set up. So if the audio doesn't work, if the video cuts off, if the door is too, like those fall on you. And it's like you embody all this new anxiety. And I remember, oh man, what movie? I shouldn't put it out there anyway. There was a film that you loved in Ep3, and we had audio issues, and I don't know what they came from. We did many digital renderings of it. And there were audio issues. And I remember sitting in the theater sweating, going like, oh my God, it's fucking tanking this movie. And I remember I had to get out. And I was like, dude, I can't be in there. I have to pretend like this isn't happening. And then the movie ended and people came out crying. And I was like, oh no, like what happened in there? And they're like, oh, it's a beautiful film. And I think you know what it is because it made you cry when you watched it.
Yeah.
And my sister. But I just remember thinking they were crying because of the audio, which doesn't even make fucking sense now that I'm talking about it.
Well, when you're organizing it, it's like you're under a microscope for it.
For sure.
And you notice every tiny little thing like that. It's just, you're like a piece of bacon in a frying pan. A frying pan. Frying pan.
I mentioned a frying can.
Out on the railway when you're riding around with your dad, you need that frying can.
There's, on that same topic, there's nothing worse than, as a filmmaker, watching your movie in a theater where it'll get to like quieter, slower parts, and you can just hear like wrappers opening and people shifting around, because every little thing you hear, you're like, oh God, they're bored, or like, you know, they're not into it. And it's just like this heightened awareness you have when you're the one responsible for it in a group setting like that.
Oh yeah, I was a stand-up for a while, so I get it. Yeah,
he knows what a bored crowd looks like.
Look, I played a nursing home one time where 40% of the crowd was asleep.
Oh, I thought you were going to say died.
Yeah, I get it.
Now, did you intro your own film when you did the very brief live screening?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, at the film festival?
Yeah.
I did, yeah. Mm-hmm. It was
okay.
it was all pre-recorded.
Oh, okay.
Well, the intro was pre-recorded, but then after the thing, we did go live. We used a platform called Sia Live, which was really cool. It's a Canadian-based company, and they have almost like a control room where there's some like a stage manager running the festival who can like push you to stage and you pop up on screen kind of thing. Everything flowed really well. Yeah, they had great like bit rate and all that.
Oh, interesting. And you know, I only bring that up because, you know, a lot of the time, oh man, when we did our White Elephant party this year, or no, it wasn't White Elephant, it was the Halloween one. I showed a movie, Rocktober Blood, that I have very fond memory of. And I knew in the middle of that film, it just is so sleepy. Nothing happens. And nothing's worse than like in the middle of a slasher, you just, you know, take a nap.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, normally you can kind of control that with the right kind of introduction. And I feel like that can, like, whenever we do an intro, we always talk about like, what is the right way to present this movie?
Sure.
And you always want to make sure people get the tone, because I completely agree with you. When you feel that kind of like loud ambiance of the theater, dude, it could be soul crushing, especially if it's something you really love. Yeah. And you're like, hey man, I feel like so okay, Dutch, to get back on the rails here. That was forced. I'm not proud of that one.
I love it.
So, you know, our introduction to you is Horror in the High Desert. Now, you've made fucking 7 movies before that, correct?
Yeah. Well, a couple of them never came out and will never see the light of day.
Why?
The first one is like borderline Neil Breen, is that his name? Neil Green. Have you seen his films?
I have no idea.
You know who he's talking about.
I do.
Neil Breen, that's his name. Yeah,
Neil Breen.
And
you know
the other
Neil
one,
Breen.
it's kind of like a mix of that in The Room.
Oh, I do know Neil.
Unintentionally.
Well, okay. All right, Dutch. I'm gonna have to
it was my first endeavor. I had no clue what I was doing. Everything went wrong. Like it was a slasher that we were filming in an abandoned like farmhouse that I had only been in once. So we take all these people out to the middle of nowhere to start shooting, and there's fucking bats in the house.
Oh,
so we spent the first night like running around from actual real bats. So it just, all the actors, everyone else brought their A game and knocked it out of the park. I had no clue what I was doing, in over my head. We filmed the whole thing anyway, but I just had to tell them, you guys, this cannot be out there even on the internet, because it's something that in a year or two you will wish did not exist. So
Oh, okay. So you went, and I've heard a lot of filmmakers who are accomplished give this as advice to indie filmmakers, where they're like, just because you film something, don't share it. Like it could actually hurt your career. And I
yeah.
feel like you've made that choice there. But now on IMDb, don't you have to pay to list films and all that information?
You no, IMDb Pro you have to pay for, but Pro gives you the behind the curtain view of what's happening, so you can see who is attached to it, who their management is, some financial information, and it gives you the ability to get in touch with other filmmakers. Like if, say, you want to use a distributor but you know nothing about them, you can go on IMDb Pro and look up movies they've distributed and then get the contact information from that producer or director and get in touch with them. So it's useful that way. But if you're just listing a movie, you don't have to pay to do that. You just have to be able to prove that it's an actual piece of content.
Okay. So which are the movies that you don't have as available?
Bleed Out is not available. Miserable Sinners, I love it. It's like an anthology film. We just never got to finish it. And it's kind of at a point now where some of the locations that we used have so drastically changed.
Oh.
And the actors are now 3 or 4 years older, which isn't too big of a difference, but it is a difference for, like hairstyles, and it would just be really difficult to flesh it out as a fully baked project. I might release that as a short, actually.
Well, then what's the idea of putting them under your director credit? Just to show that you've got experience, or to tease people like me who are dying to watch a film called Miserable Sinners?
So you can add a title when you're in pre-production just to get it out there on IMDb, and it's a good way to start generating buzz for it.
Yeah.
If you have like a Facebook page, or if you're trying to raise money for a GoFundMe or Kickstarter, that kind of thing, it helps to have it on IMDb. But it's hard to remove something from IMDb. They make that very difficult. Yeah. Like when actors are in movies that they're mortified and ashamed of, it is really hard to have your credit taken off of there.
Well, thank you, IMDb. I really appreciate that you do that. So, okay. So are you saying that you put it up there and then you're just kind of like, well, fuck, I wish I could take that down, but...
Yeah. I do wish I could take Miserable Sinners off of there, and then once it's done, put it back up there. Bleed Out, I would have scraped from the record of everything if I could. It was just a hot mess.
Well, here's the thing. You're playing in the world of, where fiction meets nonfiction, and we're blurring reality. I feel like you could probably mine these features for content, reconnect with the actors, and turn that into something.
You are reading my mind. So that's an incredible suggestion, and I've kind of been toying with it. It's funny too, because Bleed Out, the first movie that will never see the light of day, I tried doing what I did with Horror in the High Desert with that movie by using the movie footage itself as this group of film students making a movie vanished kind of thing. And this is their footage, and then interview the people around them, their family, their other film student friends, and we actually shot all of that. I did all these. I tried turning it around. I shot all this whole other cult thing involved with it, but it just still kind of felt for me watching it, even being closely related to it, I still felt like what you were saying earlier, where you're like, this is the director telling me to believe this kind of thing. It had this very phony feel to it. So I never.
Now, it's interesting because, film fans, if you go to if you take a couple community college courses like I did, and you walk away knowing a $10 name like Truffaut, you can start mentioning, how the French had created the whole theory of the auteur, and, the director's put up on this pedestal, and the film is really it's an expression of a singular person filtered through the collaborative art that is so beautiful. Now, in found footage, though, when we're dealing with the internet specifically, you can take all that beautiful stuff and throw it out the window, because at the end of the day, it's the editor, and the editor doesn't need to have a voice. So you could even just chop up that movie, be a completely third-party dark web, hacker, I'm air quoting here, and just cut together like the kind of edgy documentaries that show up on YouTube, where it's like, weird multimedia pulled from weird videos that are cut together, and it's not polished at all. And I think that kind of stuff could really work. And I only say all this because dude, do what's interesting, like cool ideas. You clearly are a very intelligent dude. And I think if now that you're in that kind of like internet culture, do the Fear Footage 2 thing, where how had nobody ever made a movie about, hey, the Fear Footage came out and apparently I'm in this movie, but I didn't film this movie. That concept, I feel like if you brought that to a boardroom looking for money, they would light you on fire and throw you out the window. Yet for the internet, dude, I was so fucking excited.
Sorry,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I definitely have plans to, I just created a Horror in the High Desert YouTube channel that's going to be same kind of thing as the films, but a shorter, more streamlined, like YouTube video version of them, maybe 20-30 minute little things that'll revolve around either different stories altogether, or maybe some of them will like revisit something that happened in the first one that was never really talked about, kind of thing, just to have more content from that universe on YouTube, because YouTube's such a huge audience. And I love going down a YouTube rabbit hole with that kind of stuff you're talking about. That's just bizarre. Some of it doesn't even make sense type of videos. Like there's one, I can't remember. It's a found footage video that went viral on YouTube, and it's this girl in Japan walking through her grandparents' old dilapidated, flooded apartment, and she kind of keeps repeating it's very Lynchian. She keeps repeating herself and opening doors to rooms that are just like covered in mold and wet, and going in this like little circle around this apartment and but sometimes she'll open one and there's something in there that wasn't before. It's really bizarre stuff that you could watch for 30 minutes and just be like, what am I even watching? But it's incredible.
Yeah, the best part about that stuff, like the elevator game that came out of, I can't pull her name right now.
Lisa Lamb?
Yeah. The stuff is the audience is a bunch of fucking voyeurs who, I kind of put down a little bit earlier saying they all hang out at home alone and watch films on the internet. But I mean, these are the people who their interaction with the film isn't in a theater. It's not in a community setting. It's like usually 1 foot away from the screen, and they can pause the fucking movie, with the space bar. So, the thing, I haven't seen the video you're talking about. Please send us a link.
I'll find it and send it to you. It's really crazy.
Well, the thing that you instantly in my head, the picture I'm building is that once that video ends, the next one is like, you should watch. And then it's a video where there's red circles around the black and white footage. And it's like over here. And it's people trying to like figure out what the hell's really going on. And those are just as like fun. Like, and that's, on the show I keep mentioning this, like, this uncognitive negotiation we have with like the ARG moniker, where it's, the alternate game thing. And I think now we're at a point where people who like found footage film, they are kind of silently agreeing to that already. So if you're buckled up and ready to do anything, then, you get past people saying Gary all the time, or like, you don't think too much about the age difference. Also, I just remembered, was Horror in the High Desert the movie that we loved how the news anchor?
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
You guys did talk about that.
Dutch, if I had an award to give you, I would fly. You're in LA. I would go out there and hand it to you personally. Me and Clark, it is one of our pet peeves, like CGI fire. The fucking terrible news anchor.
Yeah.
How do indie films get this wrong all the time?
It's also one thing that pulls me right out of a movie. Where it's just like, oh, they can be so painful. I got super lucky with this actor because he was, you guys called it, he was a former anchorman. Yeah.
That sounds like something you would do.
And that was his first take.
Damn. Yeah, it's. And I'll tell you, you say indie. It's not just indie. Major, multi-million-dollar Hollywood films fuck this up so easily.
It's almost like they're all cut from the same cloth. They're like very pretty people. They could have been a model, but they know how to read and articulate.
So the actor's part of it, but the other part of it is just like, the tickers. Sometimes it's way too busy, and it's just. It turns into a parody. Yeah, it turns into a parody of itself. And it really, like you said, Dutch, it takes you out of it. And you nailed it.
I got lucky with that guy. I mean, I was so nervous to see, because he did it remotely, because everything was, it was COVID. Yeah. And I was so nervous to open it. And when I opened it, I could not have been happier. And then it occurred to me to sell it even more, is to, instead of just have it, one thing too for me that's awkward about them is when they just come up on the screen like you're watching that presentation. So I showed it on a TV. I showed it as like, someone comes running into a room, they're like, the news is back on, and they're recording it on a TV. To me, that also helped with the authenticity of it. Frame rate too, when people are shooting those. If they got the frame rate wrong, it's just whoa.
Now, Dutch, what was that first podcast you went on? It's an indie film podcast.
Indie Horror Rising.
Yeah, shout out to them. I really appreciate it. Now, we could never do it on this show because me and you don't know anything about cameras. But when you started talking about like the editing equipment you used and all the technical stuff,
yeah,
even though I have no footing there, I really enjoyed it. And
we're not fucking nerds, dude.
I don't know. Randy could probably hang with it a little bit.
Randy's a fucking nerd. That's why his camera's off.
I know.
He knows what his role is.
He's on timeout. But yeah, again, like everybody should go check that out just to hear that. Because again, like me and Clark talked a long time ago, we want to have guests on here and we want to be more of a podcast free form. And Dutch, I can't help but feel a little guilty that we keep you here and we talk about trains and stuff instead of your career, which I really think.
I'm down to just bullshit.
You have two huge fans here, and I'm gonna do my damnedest to see Bleed Out and Miserable Sinners at some point, because the fact that you're hiding them, dude, that's a grail. You realize it's the Streisand effect. The minute you tell people you're not allowed.
That's our calling card.
I thought about destroying the hard drive that Bleed Out is on, because I was like, if I got robbed and that thing was in some stranger's hands, I would not sleep for a month.
Well, Dutch, here's what you do. Do an Alan Smithy. Why don't you Alan Smithy it? Where you put that. So that's an old Hollywood trick to where if the director didn't want to attach their name to the project, they would just put Alan Smithy as the name of the director.
The problem is I'm in it. That's another.
It's an Alan Smithy film featuring Alan Smithy.
I mean, I was starring in it, directing it. I just would bit off way more than I could chew.
I don't know.
That sounds fun.
All right.
I mean, there are parts of it that you all would die laughing at. You know what? I might send you some scenes.
Send us a little taste. Send us a little
I'll send
taste.
you-
We're all friends here.
Little
See,
tidbit.
When the world finally opens up, we have to do like screenings where we get like rising talent like Dutch. We show his film in a theater like it should have been done more often. And then we, throw in a little bit of bleed out or something.
This is it.
We got to do it. And man, the fact I'm going to remember you saying I wanted to destroy that hard drive forever. That is like, Dutch, imagine you were me sitting here and you hear a director say that. You're like, I need to break into his house now because he's going to destroy that. Fuck. Man, I don't know. Should we let him go? I'm feeling
We
guilty.
got our
But
time. I got to pee.
we're at hour 20, but I don't know how much of that Randy's going to cut out.
We started around 5 minutes in. We're an hour 15.
Dutch, I'm worried because I know you're very busy.
I'm not.
Yeah,
I mean, today I blocked out a couple hours, so I'm good on time.
Here's what we should have opened with. What's your zodiac sign?
I am a Virgo.
Uh-oh. Don't get on his bad side. One of our guest hosts was a Virgo, a one Terrell Trotty. So
well, then you're not far from me. I'm a Leo, so I'm right there before you. I think.
Okay.
Dang.
And what are you?
I need to ponder on that. Me and Oksana were both bulls. We are Tauruses.
Okay.
We're very stubborn. That's how we keep the show alive, even though Clark is constantly trying to kill it.
Yeah. Again, rebirth, baby.
Hey, Randy, what are you? You're like a Sagittarius or something on.
No, Randy's a Cancer.
Libra.
That's right. I always forget. Because Miss Cleo, you're a Libra, aren't you, darling? I like Randy didn't turn on his camera to say that. It just sounded like he yelled it across his kitchen. Fuck, I don't know. You got anything for Dutch?
Before we go, I'm going to send you guys in a week or two a screener for the next movie, Minerva.
Hold on. Let's say bye. Dutch, love you to death, man. You're incredibly talented. You're going to be, whether you like it or not, you're going to be remembered on the internet, and you're going to have people all over the world digging into your film, trying to find your address and stuff. We had a brief run-in with that when we were doing an ARG for a 24-hour.
Yeah.
So be careful. Make sure your stuff's not linked. And thank you for carving out some time to talk with us today.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, man.
Awesome.
Well, another thing, just before we go, you have to know the end of your film scared the shit out of Clark. And it was a rare moment where I wasn't looking and I had to rewind it. And it fucking just works. So, if people haven't seen Horror in the High Desert, go on Tubi. Do it while it's free. Because as we know, Nigel Bach got picked up by Breaking Glass and all the shit's pulled now.
Yeah, and they recut it.
And they recut a movie.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
They recut it in a way where they added footage.
They added 15 minutes. What the fuck? What are we doing?
And again, Dutch, just like your features, we like a brisk runtime.
Yeah.
Don't adhere to that 90-minute thing with sound footage. Do what you need. They fucking
that 90-minute thing is bullshit.
All right. Yeah.
Thanks again, Dutch.
Love you, Dutch.
Thanks, guys.